Hello,
Hello,
everybody. Good
everyone.
to see you all. Hi. Uh, to those of you who doesn't know whom I haven't met, my name is Rio from Japan America Society of Minnesota. Thank you all for joining us today. We're very, very excited to have DuBois Sensei to talk about Ghibli Park that just opened like what, a little bit ago. And I haven't been. I have been to one in Mitaka, but not this new one. So we're very, very excited to hear about that. Um, First of all, I just wanted to let you know that we have a lot of events going on this month. This coming Sunday at Japanese Library, we're having fundraiser. It's a kind of estate sale style fundraiser. We have over 500 pieces of clothing and shoes, handbags, and scarves. And within the 500 pieces, about over 100 pieces are the suits made out of chirimen kimono silk. So this is the order made suits that was made for this individual that who donated to us. Um, and it's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. And this lady that who donated to us is so small that I cannot really fit into any of her clothes, and in her clothes that it kind of like ends here for me. But if you wear size from like 8 to 10, and if you are interested in owning a beautiful piece of clothing made by Kimono Silk, please join us this Sunday. And we do have information on our website. And I'll just let you know that so that if you were to go to this company that who made this clothing, if you were to get blouse, it's about $300 to $400 a blouse. That's how crazy this thing is. All the fabrics are from Kyoto too. And then we have other things. I mean, shoes are not Chinimen, obviously. But so yeah, we're very, very, very excited. And we look forward to have you with us. And also 23rd Saturday. 23rd Saturday is golf tournament. This is our third golf tournament, and we are having quite good number of participants. But if you are interested, golfing with the other people that who's interested in Japan, please join us as well. And then we also have information on our website as well. And also thank you to all the JASM members that who has been helping us or supporting us and working with us. And also everyone that who donated when you registered to this event. Thank you so, so, so much. We exist here because of you. And because of a lot of events that we are hosting, if you are interested in volunteering, email me. I will put you to work, and it's always fun. So if you can join us, that would be great that way as well. Okay, so I am muting all of you, and if you have questions, please directly send me a chat message, and at the end of the lecture, I will moderate the Q&A for all of us. I think that's the only thing that I wanted to let you know. Okay, so without further ado, DuBois 先生、よろしくお願いいたします。
はい、よろしくお願いいたします。I'm tripping over myself here. Thank you so much for having me. It's quite an honor to speak at this event, and it's nice to see familiar faces and some new faces in the crowd. And my parents are here, so thanks for logging in. I am going to share my screen and take it from there. So if there are issues, please let me know. Okay. Everyone can see the Ghibli Park title page. Okay. A trip to Ghibli Park is almost as much about the journey to get there as it is the experience once you reach the destination. Of course, I didn't expect it to be easy to get tickets, but as I'll discuss, the entire experience fits into the larger spirit of Ghibli Studio and its animated creations. To engage in a meaningful way, you have to do some work. For the movies of Ghibli, this is an aesthetic value. Characters are not simple, but rather complex, with complicated motivations and ethical impulses. For Ghibli Park, the reason may be slightly more mundane. If it were easy to get tickets and drop in, with easy and direct access from a Shinkansen, for example, the throngs of people could compromise the experience. But I want to clarify something lest I confuse you today. Ghibli Park is not Ghibli Museum. So just a very brief background. Ghibli Museum was established a little over 20 years ago in 2001. It's located in Mitaka, Tokyo, just west of the main central Tokyo. It's in the middle of Inokashira Park, this beautiful park in between Kichijoji and Mitaka. It's really an art museum, an interactive art museum featuring a giant stuffed cat bus that kids can play in. On the top, there's a garden roof with a robot from Laputa cast in the sky. Ghibli Park, on the other hand, established in 2022 and opened less than a year ago in November. It's located outside of Nagoya in Aichi Prefecture. It's inside the Expo 2005 Aichi Commemorative Park. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And it features many areas that allow you to inhabit worlds created by Studio Ghibli. It also has a cat bus that kids can play on. This one looks a little more patchwork. And it also has a robot from Laputa. So I'll show you a couple maps really quickly. Here is a map of Ghibli Park at the corner of the Inokashira Park. And I recommend getting off at Kichijoji so you can walk through Inokashira Park on the way. And here is a much more complicated map of Ghibli Park. And this says Ghibli Park Phase 1 map. I'll get into that later, what Phase 1 and Phase 2 are. But to call it a theme park seems inappropriate because theme park conjures up images of roller coasters, light shows, hordes of people eating greasy foods. But what it is not is a self-contained world. Ghibli Park is not a world like Disney World. It's not a land like Disneyland. The Park of Ghibli Park points to something much more modest. It's just a park with trails where you can walk around, maybe even get a little lost. Rather than being set apart from the natural surroundings, the areas are incorporated into them. Ghibli Park is a reminder of the this worldliness, the way that the movies are still anchored in our reality as they quickly fly into the fantastical. And just one more comparison, here are the robots from one from Ghibli Park and one from the Ghibli Museum, both taken fall of last year, 2022. So let me back up a little bit. This talk is about one family's experience of going to the Ghibli Park last year, and why I think we were the first Minnesotans to visit. And then during Q&A, I'm happy to give some tips about how to get to Ghibli Park and why you might want to wait for a little bit. But how did we get there? First of all, I was in Japan last fall to direct a study abroad program in Tokyo with 17 students from the College of St. Benedict and St. John's University. My family joined me, and I wanted more than anything to bring them to the not yet open Ghibli Park in Aichi Prefecture. Sadly, I couldn't bring my students, although I'm sure they would have loved to go. In August, Ghibli Park announced a lottery for entry to the individual areas, for which there were 3 at the time. There's the Grand Warehouse, the Hill of Youth, and the Dondoko Forest. Each area has its own entry in this lottery, so I had to apply 3 times, and I lost all 3 times. Not knowing when I might have another chance to bring my family, I went searching for another way. And I found a way, a much more expensive way, and that's to get the package deal from the JTB travel agency that included the Shinkansen, the bullet train, the hotel, and the park tickets. And yes, it was expensive, but even if I'd won the lottery to get the cheap tickets, we still would have had to buy a Shinkansen ticket. We still would have had to pay for a hotel. So it ended up being convenient to have everything booked together. So we chose to go to the Dondoko Forest at 10 a.m., the Hill of Youth at 11:30 a.m., and then Ghibli's Great Warehouse at 1:30 p.m. You'll notice there are 2 areas I haven't discussed yet. I'll get to those in a bit. So having lost the lottery, but acted fast to purchase tickets through JTB, we secured entry into these areas of the park on November 17th of 2022, a time when most people in Japan who were trying to get tickets were not able to get tickets. So I felt like I had, even though I didn't win the lottery, I felt like I still won the lottery by finding them. And it made me think that I am likely, my family is likely the first Minnesota family to get in. It was only 2.5 weeks after opening day. Our kids had spent the previous evening watching the film Arrietty from 2010 in our Nagoya hotel room, and they were starting to get excited. So we took a train in the morning. It requires several transfers to get to the park, but on our way there were already traces of Ghibli Park on the train station pillars. But as you leave the station and enter the park, there's no sense that you're entering a theme park. There are no long lines to scan tickets, no visible security. It was just open paths, a kombini, bathrooms, an information center. In fact, anyone could just enter and take a stroll. The only parts requiring tickets are the 3 timed entries that I mentioned. So we walked down the hill to get a view of the clock elevator tower, the type of architectural creation that would look natural in many Ghibli films. It evokes a steampunk aesthetic with its exposed gears, porthole windows, and strange weather vanes. And I thought I'd show you just a couple images of steampunk from other movies. So here's one from Laputa, Castle in the Sky. One from Spirited Away. Steampunk aesthetic has a lot of, coal-fed engines and gears that churn and steam pumping out of pipes. And finally, Howl's Moving Castle. It's all about the clunk and chink and whistle sounds of steam. So we headed straight to Dondoko Forest. To get there, we had to travel through a gently elevated path that meandered through the woods. And it was surreal to arrive at a theme park and feel that you're rather entering a nature preserve. You just don't get that experience at Disney. We eventually made the descent to Dondoko Forest, which may hold maybe the most magical attraction of the entire park, which is the Mei and Satsuki House. The Mei and Satsuki House, once a structure that existed in the imagination of Ghibli founder Hayao Miyazaki, then as a cartoon, and eventually painstakingly rebuilt as a real-life replica, of the house from the animated film My Neighbor Totoro. The timed entries were that meant that the number of visitors were limited at any given time, but it meant we could take our time without fighting crowds. We could just experience it. My Neighbor Totoro has a special place in the hearts of my family. My 3 kids have seen it many times, and when the distributor G Kids started bringing it to theaters in Minnesota and across the US years ago, it was the first film I brought my middle child Marin to see in a movie theater. It's the story of a family that moves to an old fixer-upper of a home in the countryside while the mother recuperates at a hospital in town. The father, Kusakabe-san, works in his book-filled study as his young girls, Mei and Satsuki, explore the wonders of their surroundings. If you haven't seen it yet, please do, as soon as you can. This house was recreated at great expense in 2005 in time for the Aichi World Expo, the Aichi Banpaku. And I visited the expo with my sister at the time, but there was such high demand for visiting the Mei and Satsuki house that we weren't able to get tickets. The front part of the house, which you can see behind me and my wife Melissa, that's Western style. It's called the Yokan. And that's Kusakabe Sensei's study. And as a professor myself with too many books, and with children with the imagination and energy of Mei and Satsuki, I've begun to identify with Kusakabe-san in recent years. Here I am sitting in the bath area that is featured in the movie, and this is the image that was on the promotional emails and stuff for this event. I'll move on. What's wonderful about the house is you can really touch everything, and the staff there encourages you to do so. You can open the closets, you can rifle through the drawers. It feels like you're visiting the home of an important historical figure of humble origins, but whose possessions have been perfectly preserved. There's also an authenticity to it that I've never seen at another theme park, where the veneer and artifice are ever present. This feels very real. I bought a book of the making of the Mei and Satsuki house, which took years of planning, design, and even use of wood joinery went into its creation. Here's just one open page from the book, where you can see the very interesting designs of the drain pipes, for example. So this talk is titled Encounters with Totoro and Laputa's Robot, but where is Totoro? He is nowhere to be found in Dondoko Forest. So this house is the Mei and Satsuki house, the only characters who possess the child's imagination strong enough to see the legendary creatures. But they're not there, not visibly at least. There are no stuffed Totoro creatures tucked into the corners. There are no soot sprites, at least I didn't see them. But just because I didn't see them didn't mean children don't imagine them there. And here my daughters think they've seen soot sprites as they look into the dusty attic where Mei and Satsuki had discovered them.
Soot sprite, actually. I want to. Oh, I can't see it anymore.
The soot sprites, also known as Makuro Kurosuke or Susu Atari, are supporting characters in multiple Ghibli films, so they may be familiar to the seasoned viewer. Here they are in the kitchen. This is a picture of my daughter Marin, my son Penn in the middle, sporting very long hair at the time, and my wife Melissa. I had some images in my head, such as Mei and Satsuki standing in the kitchen doorway, that I had hoped to convince my daughters to let me replicate. However, they had absolutely no interest. They just wanted to run around and collect the acorns, which in Japanese are called donguri, and not to be confined to the hopes for certain images. And this is why Ghibli Park, and perhaps especially this modest area, was so perfect. After all, the Mayan Satsuki house is just a house surrounded by trees. And it's why the overstimulating rides and shows of other theme parks are no comparison. The Mayan Satsuki house give you, and let's be honest, children more than adults, the room to imagine and bring their full creativity to the space. I assume that many people go to Ghibli Park for the photo opportunity to sit next to No Face on the train from Spirited Away, or for other photo opportunities. I've already shown you some pictures of me and the robot, after all. But if that's the draw, the way the Ghibli Park can draw you in and elicit the imagination and creativity is far more important and meaningful. Nora, 4.5 at the time, didn't care that she was wearing the seashell sunglasses from Disney Sea. The kids were just there to explore. Perhaps my absolute favorite part of the entire day was when Nora had dropped one of the donguri, the acorns, she had collected into Kusakabe's study. Visitors couldn't enter the study, so I told her just to leave it on the floor. A minute later, some visitors noticed that the donguri Nora had dropped onto the floor, and they thought it was intentionally placed there. I heard them point out the donguri on the floor and say, "Komakai tokoro made kagaita ne." They've thought of everything down to the most minute details. While the placement of the donguri by Nora was an accident, the intentionality of having visitors create their own experience was absolutely not. Therefore, the visitors were not wrong at all. My daughters, Marin, 7 at the time, and Nora, 4 at the time, were close in age to the characters Mei and Satsuki from My Neighbor Totoro. And while they weren't there to be Mei and Satsuki, they certainly matched their curiosity, their energy, and their spirit. What a treat it was for me to be reminded that Miyazaki is actually giving us a reflection of ourselves in his movies. I wanted just to show you this beautiful stained glass window from the door of the entryway to Ghibli Museum in Tokyo. So this was not at Ghibli Park, but I loved it. This scene from Totoro shows the magical creatures arriving in the night to help Mei and Satsuki sprout their seedlings from the ground. And unprompted, my son Pen, who was 10 at the time, called over the girls to the open field in front of the house. From there, we ascended a long staircase to reach the final part of Dondoko Forest. There's a small gift shop where visitors can buy omamori, which are amulets, and the one you see there that looks like a pouch. And those are exclusive to Dondoko Forest. And for that reason, they were expensive, but we could not resist the temptation to get Dondoko Forest exclusive omamori. We left Dondoko Forest with waves goodbye from other visitors in a small funicular that descended the steep slope. I believe the car also provides access to those with strollers or wheelchairs. Next, we took the long stroll around the park to Youth Hill, another timed area that makes references to movies such as Whisper of the Heart from 1995 and The Cat Returns from 2002. You can peer into the Cat Bureau from The Cat Returns and view furnishings shrunk into the perfect size for a cat. There's Melissa and Marin peering into the house, and that's what they can see. You see the cat with, well, several cats from the movie The Cat Returns. We then entered the World Emporium, the house featured in Whisper of the Heart. There's even a miniature replica of the building itself within it. a replica within a replica, if you will. Though the movie was set in the 1990s, the furnishings in the World Emporium harken back to the 1970s and 1980s appliances and aesthetics, marking the unevenness of time and how the past is always also captured in the present. For many of you, if you've seen Whisper of the Heart, you can see this image and the John Denver classic Country Roads will start playing in your head. It certainly did for me as I went downstairs and could see Seiji Amasawa's workshop. This is Seiji playing the violin, where he, a precocious teenager, made his own violins. Next to the workshop are some of the musical instruments played in the movie. I brought up the attention to detail that went into the Mei Satsuki house. Of course, that attention to detail also adds a deep sense of authenticity to the Ghibli films themselves. I come from a musical family, including a mother who played string instruments and symphonies when I was young. However, it took Whisper of the Heart for me to learn about the viola da gamba, a Baroque predecessor to the cello, but with 7 strings and frets. In Whisper of the Heart, the viola da gamba was played by Seiji's grandfather, Shido. The staff encouraged me to try playing it myself, which I certainly did, very poorly at that. After taking a break for lunch, we entered the final destination, Ghibli's Grand Warehouse, for our 1:30 timed entry. The line to get in was long, and my sense is that they sell many more tickets to the Grand Warehouse than other areas because it's a large indoor museum with much greater capacity. And the sense there is so much different than the Totoro house, which can only fit a handful of people at any given time. The Grand Warehouse was built in what used to be a large indoor ice skating rink. And this is by far the most theme park-like areas of all the ones we visited. The inside is a vast amalgamation of many movies by Studio Ghibli, including ones not covered by Dondoko Forest and Hill of Youth, such as Spirited Away, 2001, Laputa Castle in the Sky, 1986, and Arrietty, 2010. There are flying ships, and there is the most frenetic scene of Yubaba from Spirited Away in her office, frozen in time, with papers suspended in the air. But every once in a while, it's hard to escape the feeling that as much as you are there to look, you are also being watched. In the movie Arrietty, people no larger than a mouse live under the floorboards of a house. Their furnishings are made out of everyday objects, where, for example, a wristwatch might be the size of a wall clock. This section was a blast for my kids, who could imagine themselves being shrunk to a couple inches tall. And they had just watched the movie the night before, so it was fresh on their mind. Here they are inside of a jelly jar. And we managed a couple pictures with Laputa's robot. Laputa's robot. For some reason, the kids insisted that I pick them up for the occasion. We skipped the exceedingly long lines to get our pictures taken with No Face from Spirited Away. We weren't there to wait, though. We were there to play. I could go on and on about Ghibli's Grand Warehouse, but it's really impossible to cover it all. And I don't want to spoil it. I think that if all of you could get there someday, it's worth it. For me, the entirety of Ghibli Park is best experienced vicariously through my kids, the ones who still possess the magic within, to see Totoro and the soot sprites, even if they're not there. So my family, my 3 kids and my wife, left Japan 1 week after this, and I had to stay on longer. I had more duties as the study abroad program director. I had speeches to give, seminars to teach, excursions to lead. But as I cleaned our apartment in the weeks afterwards, I continued to find donguri in various nooks and crannies of the apartment. Just as Totoros were not physically at the Mei and Satsuki house, but their presence was felt strongly, the presence of my children pervaded our small apartment. And I'd be reunited with them soon enough. So that's the end of my main presentation, but I wanted to share a couple updates about Ghibli Park and then open the floor for questions or comments. So I mentioned that there were 3 areas that we were able to enter. And that's phase 1 of Ghibli Park's opening. So only the 3 Dondoko Forest, Hill of Youth, and Ghibli's Grand Warehouse were open. The Mononoke Village, which is dedicated to Princess Mononoke, the film Princess Mononoke from 1997, that will open November 1st of this year, 1 year to the day after Ghibli Park opened. The Valley of Witches, celebrating the wonderful Kiki's Delivery Service from 1989 and Howl's Moving Castle from 2004, will open in March of 2024, so in little over half of a year from now. And when I said earlier that I think you might want to wait, not only will it be very hard to get into those places, you may want to wait even longer until the crowds die down a little bit. So maybe in a year from now. But it will all depend on when you're in Japan and how you want to get there. A little more news. Just yesterday, it was announced that Toyota is making an accessible, as in, I believe, wheelchair accessible shuttle bus. There are already shuttle buses available, but none are shaped like a cat bus, one of the main characters in My Neighbor Totoro. And finally, I'm anticipating questions about this, but Ghibli has a movie coming out to much anticipation because it may be Miyazaki's last. The Boy and the Heron, in Japanese, it's How Do You Live? Kimi Tachi wa Dou Ikiru ka? That will be released in the United States on December 8th through the distributor G Kids. So we have to wait a couple more months to see that one. And unfortunately, I can't just hop on a plane to watch it in Japan. So I, like you, will be waiting until December to see that one. I will end my slideshow now, but I want to thank you very much for listening. And now it's time for your questions.
ありがとうございます。Thank you very much. It just make me want to go more.
I want to go back.
Just, yeah. If you have any questions, please send me a message via chat, and I can ask the question to DuBois sensei. But so when it opened, I was kind of following a lot via like news, Japanese news and whatnot. And then what I saw was that in the studio where the violin was being made, there was a lot of like wood, like chips or whatever. What do you call it?
Yeah, the shading.
みたいな And the news was saying that it was actually brought in from actual violin makers, and they kept all the chipping of the wood and then moved it in there. And I was just wondering, was it really wood on the floor? Just
Yeah, and there was a little roped off area, so you couldn't touch Sage's
mm,
tools, but there were definitely wood chips on the floor, and I think that that's the type of example that adds to the sense of authenticity. There's something very real about it. It doesn't feel like a pretend violin workshop. It feels like someone could have actually been there.
it's so interesting that it seems like, I mean, you were saying this, but like a history museum or a science museum type of feel rather than Disneyland.
Yeah, and we had gone to Disneyland only a week before, and the contrast was just so strong. You go to areas that are themed like, you know, um, they're supposed to be Arabian Nights, like Aladdin, and everything just screams of artifice. There's nothing. You're supposed to be entering a pretend space, and
Mhm.
Disney, they want Agrabah is a pretend city anyway, but they want you to feel like it's pretend. Um, I think Ghibli is doing something different and reminding you that their works are grounded in reality.
Did they have like a didactic of like a historical background, or like what are the like a tools that what are those tools or none
No,
of it?
it doesn't have captions like that. Nothing is labeled. Instead,
Oh, interesting.
instead it's just like you're walking into somebody's workshop unlabeled. You're walking into the real space.
Wow. That's very different, in it? Like the one in Mitaka, it
Hmm.
has like a studio and then he will explain to you what like tools are and whatnot.
Yeah.
But
The staff are there to explain.
okay.
And um, I'm wondering if anything was labeled. I don't think so in the Hill of Youth. Not that I can think of. Um, and I think the Hill of Youth and the Mansatsuki House, they they have a very similar feel to them. They feel like places that could have been lived in by real people. Um, the the Grand Warehouse doesn't feel that way necessarily.
Right.
But, and just to get back to the Disney comparison, if there's anything that's like Disney, it's or we went to Disney Sea, but there's the land, the Little Mermaid land. I don't know what it was called in Disney Sea. Um, the Great Grand Warehouse has parts that feel sort of like that. It's very fun. It's very fun for children to climb into little tunnels and imagine themselves the size of grasshoppers or field mice.
We have a question. Did they have any themed food?
Oh, I should have brought, because I saved it, um, a damune with a picture of Ponyo on it. So it's like, if you can
Oh.
imagine, damune is sort of a nostalgic fizzy drink. It's
Mhm.
it's almost like a Sprite or something, but with different flavors. And picture of Ponyo, um, which is a movie of a fish girl who turns into a real girl and back to a fish. Um, it's the closest Ghibli gets to a mermaid story. Um, I'm trying to think if there were other foods. It is not. Um, I hate to contrast it with Disney totally, but it's not like going to Disney where you get pancakes with Mickey Mouse ears. It's rather there is a there's a kombini as you walk in, and you can get your typical kombini food like an egg salad sandwich or a tuna sandwich or an onigiri, that's not special at all. But and we didn't eat at the cafeteria within the grand warehouse because we didn't want to fight with lines. It was bad enough to wait through the line at the gift shop at the grand warehouse, which was 100 people long, I think, and that's with many registers.
Yep, I bet it's like, for me, take my money moment that I'm just like, just give my wallet and then just go with it.
We
Um,
were
there's another
modest with our
question.
spending. Yep.
Oh, sorry. There's another question. What do you think accounts for the popularity of these stories and characters in America?
That is a great question. I teach Ghibli movies in some of my classes. I teach some of them lend themselves to very well to discussions in a folklore class. And I have to say there are a lot of Ghibli movies that this theme park doesn't cover. The co-founder of Ghibli, Takahata Isao, his films don't get much attention. Films like Pompoko, the movie about Tanuki, the magical raccoon dog. Some of them, but I think Miyazaki's films and the ones represented here have a timelessness that speaks to an audience everywhere. And yes, the films are popular in the United States, but they're also wildly popular in places like China and India and Europe as well. A lot of Miyazaki's aesthetic can't necessarily be tied to Japan. He has a real fondness for Scandinavia in many of his in a lot of his scenery. And I think even the Mayan Satsuki house is this strange amalgamation of traditional farmhouse and European cottage. And so I think it can appeal to many people and tap into a nostalgia that is not specific to Japan. And I don't want to say that it's only about nostalgia for a certain time period, because certainly there are elements that my kids, elements of the scenery and the furnishings that are not familiar to my kids, and yet they love them just as well. I think especially My Neighbor Totoro captures just that unbridled spirit and energy of a 3-year-old and a 9-year-old. And that's why I loved seeing my children in the space so much.
No, that's great. Yeah, I personally always thought that it has, and I don't mean to like simplify this, but it has like aesthetic of Europe and then philosophy of Japanese. So it's kind of like the combination of that creates brand new things that we have never seen. So it's, and then I think audience now are much more interested in not just boy meets girl and then girls gets taken and then boy go help her, like not even that, like, you know, the people are is getting smart, intelligent enough that maybe bad guy had some good reason for this, or, you know, like everybody has a different view, and then everybody is right and then everybody's wrong. And then that's kind of what Miyazaki introduced, I think, as a new narrative to storytelling.
Absolutely. Characters are, I only alluded to this, but characters are complex. And often when you think that we're presented with the foil or the antagonist, the bad guy, they turn out to have very good motivations, and sometimes they become the good guy. And that's absolutely the case in Laputa, Castle in the Sky. Zeniba is this, seems like a slave driving bathhouse owner who's just ruling with an iron fist, but she too has a softer side, and you get to experience that in the movie. Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, maybe more than any other movie, presents very complicated figures, except for Nausicaa herself, who is almost messianically pure.
Mm-hmm.
I have a book that I can recommend. I've read this several times, but Susan Napier's Miyazaki World does a good job diving into the complexity of characters. I'll mention, since I brought it up, that I think she wants to reduce Ghibli to Miyazaki, and of course she recognizes that the other directors and founders are important, but the works of Ghibli to Susan Napier are about the auteur, the individual genius that is Miyazaki, and doing that fails to I think give full credit to the incredible amount of labor that goes well beyond one man. So yes, he is an absolute visionary and genius, but the works of Studio Ghibli go far beyond Miyazaki himself, and Ghibli Park is really the creation of his son Goro. So I wanted to mention that.
Oh, I didn't realize that. That's interesting. Susan Napier is like it person in it. Like Japan Society had her as a guest speaker. I was so jealous that they could invite Susan Napier, because I did study her as well, and her books, and she's is amazing. If you're anime fan, she's a really good resource. Was there anything you wished were at the park or the museum?
I knew that this was going to be a partial visit because it wasn't fully open, and I did talk about how My Neighbor Totoro has a very special place in the hearts of my family, but Kiki's Delivery Service is so wonderful. I love Miyazaki's and Ghibli's flying machines, and they're always improbable. They're always, ships. A ship that is meant to float on an ocean is not designed for flying in outer space, and yet so many of these flying objects are ship-like or bulbous, like an onion. And the dirigible in Kiki's Delivery Service is one example of that. But I would like to see more flying machines and more engagement with all of the airplane themed aesthetics of Ghibli movies. Laputa is one. The Wind Rises is another. Porco Rosso is a third. There's quite a lot of very interestingly designed flying machines. I would have liked to see more of that. Personally, I'd actually just like to go up in a hot air balloon with Miyazaki, but that's not possible.
We have another question. Are there any plans to expand the park past the 2 new additions? Also, Noah is saying that Miyazaki will not be retiring according to the VP of Ghibli Studios, but then Miyazaki has been saying he will retire like every year, so we never know. But
That's right.
is that expansion will end at the like the Kiki's thing, or are they gonna go bigger? Do you know?
I have not read of plans beyond the Mononoke Village and the what do we call it, Wita's Valley. So, not that I'm aware of, but Noah, hey Noah, he was in the picture of my students with me in Japan.
Nice.
Hey, are you in Okinawa? Maybe he's calling it.
Not yet. I'll be leaving
Okay.
for Okinawa on October 18th.
Awesome, awesome. Anyway, Noah is right that Miyazaki has not announced his retirement after this one. I think he is a restless person who will never stop drawing. And that doesn't mean he will be putting out another film, but on top of his film, on top of his movies, he does many drawings. He writes many essays. So he will not stop moving because it's not within his capacity to stop. One thing that I absolutely love about him, I'll just mention another sort of fact about Miyazaki and his co-creators, the co-creators of Ghibli. They worked really hard to get the rights for Pippi Longstocking, and they wanted to make a movie based on Pippi Longstocking in the way that many of the movies are adaptations of European or British novels, short novels or stories. And you can see the imprint of the influence of Pippi Longstocking on a very early movie, co-directed by Miyazaki and Takahata, called Panda Ko Panda, or Panda Pa Panda. I can't remember. In English, it was translated a little bit differently, but it's the dad panda and the little panda.
Interesting. Do we have any other questions or comments, or are we all good? Do we just want to go there? That's all it is. Yes. I think we all do. Yes. And let's hope that we can go while dollar is very strong. Then we can buy so many ramune and so many omamori. Thank you very much again, DuBois sensei. It was wonderful. Now I really want to go back and watch the movie as well. Okay, so picture time.
Okay.
We would like to have picture together. So if you can turn on your camera, if you are okay turning on your camera, could you please turn on your camera so that we can do pictures together? Hey, good to see you. I was about to yell at Kato-san. I was like, turn on your camera, Kato-san. All right, good. I was about to yell at Peterson as well. So good for him. All right, so what shall we say today instead of cheese? Oh, Miyazaki. That's easy. Miyazaki. Oh, I'm sorry. Ghibli. Ghibli. That's what we should say. Instead of cheese, we will say Ghibli. Yoko-san, are you ready? Hi. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Ghibli. All right. いいですか?
Right.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, DuBois 先生。ありがとうございました。
どういたしまして。It was my pleasure. Thanks for
All right,
the time
everybody,
and
have a
everything.
good night.